the best thing happened, which was also the worst thing, which was it blew up overnight. And uh and I, and it, I wasn't prepared in any, like, I was not prepared for 40,000 people to be using the site.
Well, Chris Stegner, thank you for joining us, brother. I appreciate it.
Of course, thank you for having me, Will.
Of course,
I've,
man.
I've been watching, so it's fun to actually get to participate.
Yeah, man. Thank you. Thank you for tuning in. I appreciate you listening. And yeah, this is the first Zoom podcast that we're doing. We've had the studio now for a few months, but that's on ice at the moment until things settle down a bit.
Yeah, we tried planning this a couple of times, and it literally took a pandemic for our schedules to work out. So.
Everything aligned now due to COVID.
Right, right.
Cool. Yeah. So there's some silver linings.
Yeah, for sure, for sure.
So on that note, I want to get into your background and all that stuff and kind of how you got started with very big things. But just want to hear real quick, like, how are you dealing with all the pandemic thing that's going on, and how are you guys managing as a company? Has it been a smooth transition, or has it been a little rough?
Yeah, I mean, I've definitely seen all sides of this. And I mean, we as a company, we're incredibly fortunate. So what I've kind of seen is this proves the theory of luck. I think more than anything. Like there's some incredible people I know that have amazing businesses that they've built up over years, and they've done everything right. And then this came through and just knocked them for a loop. And there's not one thing in the world that I could have said you did this wrong. Like you should have seen a pandemic coming, and the fact that travel would shut down.
Yeah.
It's definitely proven the rule on luck, and we're just incredibly fortunate that we are on the right side of luck. Telehealth obviously blew up. I've got one friend that works for a large health company. They had a telehealth system that was doing about like 80 calls per week,
Hmm.
and I think you said they were doing 80,000 now, to give you an idea. So I mean,
Wow.
telehealth's blown up. We'd done a number of telehealth projects in the past, so all of a sudden, like, we are really well positioned just to help out in that area. And we were doing a lot of stuff with online education, and we were doing a lot of just health tech stuff in general. So
Mhm.
it we like I said, we were on the lucky side of things. So things have actually been more busy for us. It's been more of like kind of keeping the whole team motivated, and reminding everybody that, like, the projects we're actually working on are things that are really helping people. They're
Definitely.
helping the world right now. So, and I think it's been a motivator, like, that's helped people to be push past burnout.
For
Because
sure.
we, like, 3 months now of just kind of like go go go, but everybody I think sees that kind of larger good. So but yeah, so I mean, like I said, things are going well for us. We've had probably three of the busiest months for ourselves. So
Yeah, and also congrats. You recently won an award. You won a Webby, so that's amazing.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Woohoo! I wish I could hold it, but it hasn't come in the mail yet. So I'll just hold my old crappy cup
That's
instead.
very cool. So for our listeners that don't know, the Webby's like the most prestigious award in the tech industry, right? It's as good as it
Period.
gets.
Yep, yep. It's the New York Times calls it the internet's highest honor. Like, the sad thing about COVID is, like, they do this amazing New
Yeah.
York show that you get to
Yeah.
go to as a winner, and, like, Oprah's there, and, like, Cardi B's there. This weird group of people. Steve Carell will be there, etc.
Right.
And you get to kind of be part of that whole thing. And of course, that got called off this year, so that was like a teardrop. We'll have to win another one next year.
Yeah,
But
sets the bar.
right.
Got to
But
repeat.
yeah, it was for technical achievement too, on the internet. So I thought that was, like, of all the categories to win, that seemed like probably the coolest one.
Yeah, it's not like you were winning an award for like best new agency or something like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
like
yeah. Exactly,
it's a big
exactly.
one, technical achievement.
Or like best hair salon website.
Exactly, man. Cool, cool. Well, yeah, I want to get into all the good stuff with very big things, but real quick, could you give like a brief background on your backstory, where you grew up, how you got into tech, and then obviously how that led into you starting very big things.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I've definitely put in like my 10,000 hours, so like that could be a really long story, and I'll try to like not let it be one. There's other articles and stuff people could pull up if they want to hear the full version, but the short version of it is, I grew up in Oklahoma and then moved to Seattle, Washington. Didn't know anybody in Seattle. Moved to like the not greatest area of town, and basically at some point I got a computer which helped keep me out of trouble a bit, and I remember we got those AOL discs in the mail,
Yeah.
and if you
10,000 free
try
hours.
exactly, and if you tried enough fake credit card numbers, then eventually you'd get one that was good enough to give you the free trial.
Yep.
I just kind of kept that going, um, which got me on the internet. And then, so when I turned 13, I had my first kind of like online business that was teaching people how to do 3D graphics. And when I was 14, that got acquired by 3dreview.com. When I was like 14 and a half, that got acquired by mydesktop.com, which was pretty big. And they brought me on as like a vice president. So all that stuff was like really cool. And then we were in the process of talking with the Ziff Davis network, which was like ZDNet, internet.com, etc.,
Hmm.
about an acquisition. And then the internet bubble burst. But you could say that's where I got my first taste. And that was like when I was 13, I was learning how to market it, how to brand it, how to do the design for it, how to do the database development for it, how to do kind of like everything. So a good education. Internet bubble burst, and fast forward, probably about 9 years later, the internet started to come back in Web 2.0 fashion,
Yep.
and I said, I had a really good job that paid a lot, but I hated. I loved Seattle, but the weather was just killing me. It's just like 9 months of gloom. And so I'm like, I'm going to move to a sunny place, and I'm going to get back into doing something that I love. And that's how I got to Florida. I literally moved here, and yeah, like the first job I got here was about a 90 to $100,000 a year pay cut, working in a little garage out in Weston, Florida. And yeah, I just remember coming home my first day and being like, I'm so happy. This is like the best decision I ever made,
Mm.
And
It wasn't about the money. It was more so just lifestyle and alignment. And
yeah, that was the whole decision. It was
yeah.
purely like, I'm leaving a good job in a place to move to some place where I know nobody. I had some money in the bank, fortunately, but it was definitely like, hey, let's do something I love. But then, within 3 weeks of making that move, saying I'm getting back into technology, working at this place in a garage, I posted a website that was basically just, I created a new startup so I could learn Ajax, which was like a new programming technique
Hmm.
at the time. And so I created the startup, and then TechCrunch did a cover story on it. And then I don't know if you remember dig.com.
I do, of course.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
so it became number one on Dig, and then Delicious, which was Yahoo's like link sharing, it became number one on Delicious.
Yeah, nice.
And we had like 40,000 people sign up in the first 4 hours, and I was like, cool, I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing. Like this is where I'm supposed to be in life,
Yep.
and of course all that helped. So I left the garage pretty quick, and as you'll hear, I tend to find that following your heart tends to lead to the money, and
Yeah.
if you just don't think about the money, it'll show up. And that was very much the what happened there, because I think within like 6 months I was making more than I was in Seattle,
Amazing.
doing something I loved,
Yeah.
and but yeah, so from there, quick version is I was tech executive at a couple of companies while doing startups on the side, kind of moonlighting, doing startups, and then from there, kind of second time where I said choose happiness and passion instead of money, was I actually got myself to being like a nice CTO position, and my wife got pregnant, and I was working 60 hours a week. And like I was like, I will never see this kid. I'm going to be in an
Mm.
office driving an hour there,
Yep.
working 60 hours, driving an hour back. And so I basically said, I'm just going to go be a developer somewhere, because I know I can do that remote,
Hmm.
and that way I can be at home for that first year, and but it was one of those things where I'm like, cool, I had this great career trajectory that led to money,
Right.
and I was just like, well, let's throw it all to the wind and just be, I don't know, like a senior developer, hopefully. I've been a developer in a few years, so like,
Yep.
and but kind of continuing the same through line, uh, I found this consulting company that I knew of, um, and they were like cream of the crop JavaScript place. I love JavaScript, and so I applied there, and I went through like three of the worst interviews in my life. I could literally do a whole podcast on those interviews, and like it's as close to like Navy SEAL training as you can get for programming.
Hmm.
Um, and
What was so bad about the interviews?
I'm like I said, like it's a long
I know
story, but
it could be a whole episode, but just give us the brief 30 seconds. Like, what made those some of the worst interviews ever?
okay. So the very first interview, they say, "Hey, we're just going to call you and talk to you for like 10 minutes,
Uh-huh.
just to get your quick thoughts on a few things, and then we'll schedule a second interview." And you're like, "Cool, that sounds
Yeah.
good."
Okay.
When
Impromptu.
they
Yeah.
call you, they say, "Hey, here's a screen share for you in a Google Draw," and you're like, "Why am I doing this?" And then they say, "Just roll with it." And then you get on the screen share, and they say, "So we're going to introduce a new programming language to you. It's a
Uh-huh.
programming language where certain colors are different, like variable types, different shapes are different functions, different this that." It's something that you're like, "What are you talking about?" And then they'd be like, "Okay, so we're going to solve a quick problem for you. Like, if this equals this, then blah, blah, blah. This is how you do it with colors and shapes." And you're
Mhm.
like, "I still have no idea what you're talking about." And then they go, "Okay, you have an hour now to solve this Fibonacci sequence using colors and shapes."
Oh my
And you're
God.
like, so later on,
Say
when
no
I was
more. I
giving
understand completely.
oh, dude, I mean, it got worse. That was the easy one.
Yeah.
Like that, but later on, when I was giving the interviews, uh, I found out that the whole purpose was to see if people would give up or not.
Mm,
Because like the number one thing for being a great developer is you
sure.
just never give up. So
Yeah. That's one of the things I respect a lot about my co-founder at Lab Ninja, Emilio. He was CTO in that business. Uh, there was always a time where I came to him and I said, can we do this? Can we do X? Can we try this? And there was all these new things. He goes, look, I don't know how to do it, but give me some time and I can learn it and I'll try, and he ended up, whatever I ever asked of him to do to produce from a technical standpoint, he did it. And it's that sheer perseverance and determination just to learn, that like can't say no attitude that really gets you far in life, especially as a developer, right?
I mean, you took the words out of my mouth. I think not even just as a developer, I think just far in life.
Yeah.
I think that same mentality can be applied to anything that you want to be successful at.
Yep.
Unless you want to be successful like sitting on a porch, which is totally fine, but
Right.
like you'd probably pull that up pretty easy.
Yep.
um, but then just to give you an idea of this, the second step, so the person who owned this consulting company, he was like famous in the JavaScript world. He had helped rewrite a big chunk of jQuery, which is like the biggest library in probably history. And so they flew you into Chicago, and you figure you'd be talking for a few hours and then you'd leave. And instead, it was like you went from the plane to like sitting in a hotel lobby with this most exceptional developer in history, kind of sitting over your shoulder, giving you some of the hardest problems. And then as you're working on them, he'd be like, "Why'd you do that? Why'd you do
Mhm.
that? Oh, that's weird. Oh, why'd you do that?" And then you finally fix it. You'd be like, "Cool, I've been working on this for 4 hours. I've done it. It works. Amazing. This is done. Moving on." And then you'd go, "Okay, now I want you to restart from scratch, except do it better."
Mm.
And that happened 3 times over like 9-10 hours, and then you
Wow.
drove to the airport. And so I mean, it was just brutal stuff where you're just like this the whole time. Like
Yeah.
so yeah, that was kind of the process, of getting into
Sounds
this kind of
intense,
first.
man.
But they ended up hiring me as like their 13th person.
Nice.
And once again, it seems like this, like, hey, I'm taking a big pay cut and like big demotion and everything. But when I was there, those 13 people worked on the most insanely amazing projects in the world. So
Mm.
like, there's only so many things we're supposed to say, but some really amazing projects for Apple that every single person has touched. Every person I know, every person that's watching this has touched. We'd go in and help train the teams, architect the solutions, etc. We did
Very
Walmart
cool.
mobile web application, we did Sam's Club, we did T-Mobile's, we did all this crazy stuff with these like 13 people.
Nice.
Um, so all of a sudden you're like, huh, maybe this wasn't such a demotion. Like this is by far the coolest stuff I've ever done in my life, and I'm worth with the most amazing people I've ever worked
Yep.
with. Um, I joke, but it's not really a joke. Like I was the 13th worst person there because I was the 13th person hired. But the first three people, this guy Mikhail, Nikisa, and Belko, they were by far the greatest developers I've ever met in my life, and like they're my partners now with very big things. You know,
Very
like
cool.
I'm like cool. So I mean that never would have happened if I would have stayed the route I was going. You
For
know,
sure. Yeah, sometimes
Uh,
you can't really get like understand the value at the time. Sometimes we look at numbers and we're like, okay, I was making X here, now I'm making Y here. End up looking back on things, hindsight's 2020, and you realize the experience and the value that you got at a specific opportunity was so much greater, even though you might have got paid less. The value is so much greater exponentially because of the connections and the experience, right, that you learn at that particular place.
cheers. Yeah, you nailed it. You know. And as Warren Buffett famously said, you know, long term greedy, and that's I think the best advice in the whole wide world is like long term greedy.
Yep.
Short term greedy is like the worst
Right.
advice. It's
Right.
like the absolute worst advice. You know?
No, definitely, definitely. You have to have a bigger picture of things and a longer tail view, and just have this idea that if you pay your dues and if you're a good person and if you're around like-minded people, that things will work out. It doesn't have to necessarily be in the short term, right? You need to plan with a much wider aperture.
And then after that, I was kind of repeatedly scouted to be a CTO and partner at a venture capital firm, which is where I met you for the first
Yeah,
time.
that's where we met.
Yep,
Absolutely.
yep.
We
You
were
were with
working,
early
collaborating
early
on
days
something.
Live Ninja. Yep,
Yep.
yep. And
Us Live Ninja guys came in, and I think we were looking for venture capital, and you were the CTO at the firm, right?
yeah, yep. I was CTO and like I said, partner there. And you know, for the record, I can say Chris Uhrig, who is our VP of investment, me and him could not have been shouting louder. Like we have to invest in these guys. Like what
Mm,
they're doing is awesome. We to an annoying point, you know.
appreciate that,
But
man.
I think it was a fact that a couple of things like that, you know, we were saying these are the smart things, and we were finding that some of our other partners were leaning towards things that they had known from their past, like
Yep.
call centers and so forth, and we're like, this isn't where we're meant to be. And
Right.
but so Chris Uhrig, you know, who's the VP of investment there, he's now joined very big things. Uh, he's doing basically the same role. So there he'd basically say, is this somebody worth investing money in?
Hmm.
Now he says, is this somebody worth investing time in?
Right.
Because we've got enough demand now to where we have to start saying, what do we work on? You know,
Right.
and we want to work on stuff that can be huge, obviously, because it's long-term greedy, right?
Yep.
If we can help it to become huge, then the greedy side, we can roll along with that and we'll profit from it, you know?
Absolutely. Yeah.
And even Renato, our chief creative officer, he was our chief creative officer at the VC firm as well. But I also worked with him at that garage, you know.
Mm.
So it all
It all
kind of
comes.
comes together,
It all
you
comes
know.
full circle. Absolutely.
Right. So no, it's good stuff. But so then after that, we started very big things, you know, kind of
Nice.
pulled the greatest developers, the greatest creative, and the greatest investment person. And then the last partner actually helped us form the company. And you know, he was at Rich is the name. He was at a like prestigious law firm, and he goes, you know, I think I want to quit, and I think I want to join you guys. This seems way more exciting.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's amazing, you know.
Yeah.
And that was 2 years ago. 2 years ago, we were
Amazing.
celebrating like last week. We were all looking. We're like, man, 2 years ago we were in Chris's kitchen, just formulating ideas. You know.
Very cool. Very cool. So how big is the team now? How many employees?
Yeah, so we were seven at that point. Now,
Yeah.
2 years later, we're just, I think we've just hit 60. We're like 59 or
Incredible.
60 right now.
Nice.
Yeah.
And you have people all over the world.
Yeah, we got three offices now. So yeah, yeah. So we got right now. I mean, in Croatia, which I'm thinking about leaving to here soon because they only have like one new COVID case a day for the whole
Mm.
country, and I'm like, cool. I
Wow.
might just go hang out there. But we're on like our third office there. So we started with a small one, then went to like a big one, and now we've got like a 4-story building there. So it's like it's kind of crazy in a way. Like you just never think about it.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, one day at a time, and then eventually, you look at it and look at what you created. It's
All right,
beyond your wildest dreams. It's amazing. So, real quick, I want to get into like a bunch of lessons and learnings that
please.
you've learned over the years. But real quick, want to definitely plug very big things for people listening. Just give the quick elevator pitch for very big things in case there's someone listening that might be a good fit to work with you.
Perfect. I'm horrible at elevator pitches, but what I'll say is we are what is referred to as a digital products agency. A digital product you could think of is any type of technology that's a real tool.
Yeah.
So it's not like hey, I need a website for my salon, but it's like, checking your email. That's a tool.
Yep.
Ordering an Uber. That's a tool.
Yep.
Booking your flight online. Anything like that. Telehealth, like we mentioned earlier,
Yep.
things that help you to actually be productive in life. Those are digital products. So those are what we focus on. We've in the last 2 years won 19 international prestigious awards, a lot of best in shows. We've kind of really proven that we're doing something different than I think the other digital products agencies out there. Uh, and not only that, but as I mentioned, we've gotten kind of picky about who we work with. So we're choosing great companies to work with in the first place. But then we've really thrown out this idea of like, you're coming to us to order a product. No, it's like, no, this is a partnership. You're
Yeah.
coming to us so we can help you succeed.
Right. Right.
And
You probably get a lot of people that want to work with you. You're very selective on who you bring on, right? Because your resources are and time is finite.
totally, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. As Chris Urigo always says, like we're kind of like a hotel and we only have so many rooms. So we got to be careful about how we give them out. Uh,
Absolutely.
but yeah. So I mean, the companies like the startups we're working with have almost across the board raised nice rounds of funding, or gone on to doing really cool things, and we move along with them. But then also we've got a lot of enterprise companies that are companies that have like been really innovative in their history, but they were like really innovative 20 years ago on like how to handle this, just completely random example, but like uh, how to like rent cars. Maybe they were like really innovative in how to rent cars 20 years ago,
Hmm.
but then over time they became an enterprise company with thousands of people, and it became harder to be innovative and so forth. so
Yep.
so we'll help jump into companies like that and allow them to kind of like be the ones disrupting their market versus being the victim of somebody else disrupting their market. So
Yep.
it's on both sides of that we're helping.
That's awesome. So on that note, for the entrepreneurs listening that are looking for a technical partner, right? They got a great idea. Maybe they have an MVP, they have a little bit of traction, or maybe they just have an outline or a deck and they really need help building out the app, right? What advice would you give them on the type of questions or the things to look for when it comes to getting a good technical partner? Because there's a lot of agencies out there, there's a lot of people that, honestly, I would say there's some dishonest marketing out there on what people can build, right? I mean, you've seen some shady characters in this industry, right? So what, if you were giving advice to an entrepreneur, what would you say is like the right things to ask and how to go about finding that perfect technical partner?
Yeah, and being honest, and to your point, and I think you and most people that know me know I'm like very transparent and very just blunt and honest. But I'll say 99% of the agencies out there just suck.
Yeah.
I mean, they can never end up being what somebody needs to actually succeed, which is why you see so many apps and so many ideas that just they're dead on arrival. Um, and so like how to find, well, and one thing too I want to touch on is, like you said, kind of like dishonest marketing. And there's truly some shady dishonest marketing, but something else that I've ended up realizing over time is a lot of the times it's actually people that are really good people. They got into things with the best intentions.
Right.
They dove into a project and about $80,000 into the project, and halfway through it, they end up realizing that they're just in way over their head.
Hmm.
And it seemed like a great project and seemed like something they could um, kind of come to meet the challenge, and then they just start realizing like, hey, we can't, and that's a tough situation for people to be in. on both sides,
Right.
so it's not always bad people. Sometimes it's just
Yeah,
simply
because in that pitch meeting in the conference room, everything sounds great, right? We want to build an app. That app sounds awesome. Sure, we can do it. Yeah, we'll figure it out. We got good developers and partners. Sounds right. And then it just starts to snowball, you know?
it just, yeah, I'm sure you've experienced
Oh
this.
yeah. Oh yeah.
And it's definitely, I would say it's the norm. Like the edge cases are the successes,
Right.
but so I mean, if I were to try to find a digital partner, I would definitely, I think there's something always massive about third party validation,
Hmm.
so I would go and I'd ask to talk to, like what I would do is I'd say, give me a list of all the products you've ever worked on, all the clients you've worked on. Cool. I'm going to choose 5 of them randomly, and I want to talk to the people who you worked on that for.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
that's the type of thing that I would do. Um, but I'd also look for like, have these people? I mean, have they won awards? Like, are they being awarded for their like? Are the companies they worked with? Have those companies gone on to get funding?
Yep.
Like the enterprise companies, are they still working with them? Like,
Yep.
things along those lines. That hearing it from somebody other than the horse's mouth
For
is a
sure.
pretty good rule. Um, and so I'm trying to think of any other things like that. But I mean, it would be, like, yeah, have they been in the press, etc. But referrals are always key from some. But don't take just a referral, because a lot of people just say like, yeah, I heard this company does. I mean, I'll be blunt. That's happened to us. Like that's never worked with us, doesn't know anybody who's worked with us, but they've heard
Right.
of us. They'll be like, yeah, you should work with very big things. They're the best. Just make sure that they've built something similar. Like if somebody built a salon website for you, and now somebody wants to build the next Uber, don't refer them to that person just because they built a good salon website
Right.
for you. It's a
Right.
vastly different world. If somebody built you an Uber, and now somebody's wanting an Uber, that sounds like a good referral.
Yeah, one of the things that I like to tell entrepreneurs regarding how to find good VCs to work with, and you let me know maybe that some of this is applicable to finding a good technical partner, is you want to go into their portfolio exactly like you said, right? And look at the companies they invested in, right? Because usually when you ask for referrals, they'll give you like the 3 or 5 of their best referrals, right? The ones that they know they can count on for that referral. But my advice to entrepreneurs is to go to the portfolio of what they invested in and reach out to 3 or 5 entrepreneurs where things didn't go right. Where they, for example, in the VC world where they had to, can the company had to fold or whatever the case may be, and ask those entrepreneurs how the VC behaved when times were really, really tough.
Mm-hmm.
And if you can talk to those entrepreneurs and they tell you, you know what, it didn't work out, but man, she handled it like a pro. He handled it like a pro. It was amazing. What a great partner. I wouldn't want to go through that type of experience with anybody else. They were great. That's the real testimonial, right? Not the one that they give you like top of their Rolodex.
I couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
I couldn't agree more. And like you said, even if it's somebody that like everything went perfect on, that's not going to give you a true, tale of how they are as people.
Right.
Everybody's good people when everything's going right, right?
Right.
But um, yeah, everybody should do exactly what you just talked, what you said, for pretty much any partner.
Yeah.
Anybody that you're getting into bed with, which I'll be completely honest. When you're choosing a digital products agency, you're getting into bed with somebody at that
For
point. Like,
sure. Yeah. I mean, it's like a marriage and like any good venture, right? That you go through, it's gonna be like roughly a 5 to 7 year journey,
mhm,
from starting it to planning it out to execution to rolling it out to acquiring customers and then hopefully to an exit of some sort,
mhm.
some type of liquidation event. That's 5 to 7 year journey. So you better make sure this is somebody you want to work with for that time, right? I mean, these partnerships sometimes last longer than marriages, in some cases,
Totally.
right? So,
If I were to plug us in one other little place, I'll
yeah,
say it's one of the things that I've realized is, like you said, every startup is like a 5 to 7 year journey.
yep,
Like you shouldn't be working on more than one startup for any period of time other than that. Like when people are doing like three on the side, that's just dumb.
right,
But so you get experience with one startup over a 5 to 7 year period versus I'm in this really awesome situation where I'm getting experience with 20 startups
right.
every 4 to 5 months. You know what I mean? Like,
Hmm.
so the amount of experience that we have, and I think that's a big part that we're offering to our clients is not just like, hey, we'll build you a product. It's the like, no, we're gonna bring you success,
Right.
and that's like we've got 20 startups that all got funded. Cool. So now we know 20 or 30 VC firms that we have
Right.
good relationships with. We know what the go-to-market strategy looks like for 10 different instances and 10 different categories. We know this vertical, you're going to approach things this way, and it's that knowledge, I think that we bring to the table is just as valuable as like the actual design, the user experience, and the development work.
Agreed. Yeah, because sometimes it's tough for the entrepreneurs to see the forest through the trees, so to speak, right? And here you are, you're dealing with 20 different companies across 10, 20 different industries possibly, where you can say, this worked at X company, why don't we help Y company with a similar approach or strategy?
Exactly. Yeah, we just saw this work 3 times in the
Right.
last 2 months. So like it's the market's still there for it. Like
Yep.
let's attack this.
For sure.
And
Absolutely.
very often we'll help people to change their business model or their monetization strategy or something, and they'll just find big success with it.
Yep.
So it's good stuff.
Awesome, awesome. So, what are some of the biggest mistakes you've seen some entrepreneurs make when it comes to building their product, right? Like, oftentimes, there are prototype mistakes or there's go-to-market mistakes. There's lots of different things that entrepreneurs just have to go through. When you're an entrepreneur, it's kind of just like trial by error. You have to figure it out as you go. But from your seat, I'm sure you see a lot of wireframes, you see a lot of prototypes, you see a lot of pitch decks, you see a lot of paper napkins.
Yeah, yeah.
What are some of the biggest mistakes you see entrepreneurs making when just approaching building a product for the first time?
I mean, I mean, one of the biggest things for sure is I think as you're an entrepreneur for maybe the first 2 or 3 times, you're so like in the zone of selling everybody else on your idea that you don't realize you've been selling yourself on your idea.
Mm,
Um, and you
yeah,
get
that's
into
so
this
true.
mindset of like, oh, I don't want the VC firm to ask me this question, but because I know there's a hole in our plan. Well, you should be saying, what's that hole in the plan? like I shouldn't be moving forward with this if there's something that I know I'm purposely keeping a blind spot to.
So true. We're
So
oftentimes we're buying our product the first. We're buying the BS that we tell ourselves, right? Like, so many times, like you'll get that critical feedback also from early people, and you'll be like, no, they just don't understand the product, right?
totally, totally.
Yeah.
And so I've started to tell everybody like step one is like disprove your own idea. Like find every flaw, uh, embrace it because like you said, it's a 5 to 7 year journey. You don't want to be spending 5 years on something that had a glaring hole if you'd looked at it.
Hmm.
And if you don't follow that advice, then you'll follow it 4 startups from now.
Right. For
So
sure.
I just skip the first 3. These are the mistakes that I made. So I mean, I can speak bluntly about it. I think it's something about that entrepreneurial spirit also comes with that like selling yourself on a dream. People tend to make like two problems. Either a they'll drastically overthink uh,
Hmm.
their solution to something before
Yep.
testing it with anybody. And that's just like from a actually now creating something that you're going to be providing to people as a service or a product or whatever it is experience. I don't really care.
Yep.
um, but definitely like coming out with something and just quick, the simplest, what we call minimum viable product,
Yep.
but I think that
MVP.
term has gone so stretched at this point to mean so many different
Absolutely.
things. So I like that like rapid prototype, like just get that like really early version and then just put it in front of a few people where you're not coaching them through it and just watch where they stumble and if they actually want it, if they're willing to pay for it. um, that's massively valuable. But then on the flip side of that, you'll also see people that'll take that advice of like, hey, if you launch something great, you launched too late, like
Hmm.
they take that way too far. And I think that's not the best advice. I think it's a great idea to get something like quick, put it in front of a handful of people,
Yep.
get their thoughts on it, put it in front of another handful of people once you've refined it. That still should be a prototype. But then at that point, once you're like, okay, we've got this thing where as a prototype, proof of concept, people are loving it. Now, what's the simplest version of that people still love? And that should be totally polished. Like by the time now you take that to market, like there's too much amazing stuff out there. Um, think people often like compare themselves to like other things in their market, like, oh, well,
Yep.
this app that does lawn service is crappy. So mine just has to be better than that. And they don't realize that nobody else has ever seen that other app. What other people have seen is Instagram, Facebook, Uber. Like
Hmm.
these are the apps that people are using day in, day out, Amazon.
Absolutely.
And so that's what you're getting compared to. You're not going to
Yeah,
get compared to your competitor. No, you're getting compared to what they're using day in, day out. So
for
um,
sure.
one of the analogies that we use constantly is, if you're going to like remodel your house, right?
Hmm.
And say you had like $30,000 to remodel a house. Well, if you got like a 800 square foot condo, $30,000, like you're getting marble floors, you're getting a beautiful kitchen, like the thing's going to be gorgeous, right? But now if you got like a 5,000 square foot house, you get new paint on the walls and some new
Right.
carpet, like
Right.
so it's the same thing. Like when you're building out your product, think of that 800 square foot version of your product,
Yep.
and that way you can polish it for the same funds that if you want 400 features, you end up with something crappy,
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And what you said is so spot on regarding how like entrepreneurs need to think of their competitors. Oftentimes, it's not just like the competitors, like people that have a similar app that you are competing against ingrained user behavior. Meaning
Yeah,
like oftentimes like you ask like people who's Uber's biggest competitor, they'll say Lyft. No, Uber's biggest competitor is the woman that's hailing a taxi on the corner because she doesn't know a better option exists. A lot of companies are like, well, let's build a CRM, right, or a system, and they're thinking, okay, we got to compete with Salesforce or Pipedrive. No, you're competing with Excel a
Excel.
lot of the
Yeah,
time,
exactly.
right? You'd be amazing. I think like literally like 80% of customers are competing with Excel and Word and things like that because that's just ingrained user behavior. Those are the things that are harder to compete with than just another software company out there that's raising venture capital. It's the
Mhm.
behavior that's ingrained that's the real competitor, right?
For sure. I mean, forever ago, I was working on a system to basically help people with find like venues, right, for like a wedding or a bar mitzvah or whatever, And what we ended up realizing was all the people running all these venues, we were competing with literally paper versions of Excel,
Yep.
you
Yep.
know, and that was literally what they had, just flipping pages. And like the idea of even switching to Excel was like mind blowing. And also, you're
Yep.
like, wait a second. Except at the time we were idiots and we are just like, this won't be a problem. We'll
Yeah.
get past this,
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
instead of like,
And they're like, no, spreadsheets work just fine for me. No problem. You
yeah,
know?
you got to hit those things head on and like, is this a real problem or not?
For sure.
But no, you're absolutely correct. You're absolutely correct.
Awesome. What are also some top tips that you give entrepreneurs when they're thinking about starting a new company, right? Like do you see people that come into your office that are like, I want to start this company because X, and you could just tell there's not a lot of passion behind it, or there's not a reason, or there's not like a true why. Like, what do you tell entrepreneurs when they're sitting in your office and you're really like thinking hard about, do I devote a ton of my time and resources and energy and my team's time into this? Like, what are some of your qualifying questions that help entrepreneurs think through if they're doing the right thing?
Yeah, and I mean that would actually come right back to the same thing as like a
Right.
VC. So like if somebody's going to a VC, I hope that the VC, if they're shutting them down on giving them funding, they're also giving them advice as to why,
Yep.
and so we tend to do the same thing. We'll say, hey, this isn't a perfect project for us now, but here's why. Maybe here's something to think about. I mean, it's the same as like when you're with a VC firm, and I'm sure with your experiences in the past, nothing matters more than the team, like period. You know, um,
Right. Because the idea can change over time, but it's the team that can see it through.
totally, totally. The idea should change over time.
Right.
Like if it's not a team that can allow change to be happening
Yep.
rapidly, um, then it's just tough. So um, team always matters the most. From that, it can be, of course, if somebody's had some successful venture at some point in their life, that's definitely proof,
Yep.
but that success can be in so many different places. We're just now starting on a project with a team where the girl that's kind of heading up the project, she was like on a I think like national or Olympic soccer team, you know, and like, okay, so you can take a challenge and just devote everything into like perfection, you know, like if you can become an Olympic soccer player, then I'm willing to bet that you can push just about anything, you
Right.
know.
It shows
In terms of, like,
perseverance, dedication, pride in your craft, the ability to train and to stick to something. It shows a lot of character, right?
totally. So things like that, it doesn't have to be in a startup, you know. So but too, if somebody's seen a failure, yeah, that's kind of always good too, because and you can tell that they learned something from that failure.
For sure.
That's important. But so yeah, I mean, definitely the team is like the most important. I also like seeing that people are kind of going after something that does speak to them. You know, whether they're like really passionate about the cause, or it's just something that they've known for a long time.
Hmm.
Like I've been selling lawn fertilizer for
Right.
30 years. I've know every lawn fertilizer. I've gone to the chemical composition of it. I've worked 12 jobs in this industry.
Yeah.
Cool. If somebody's going to do an online shop for, some new fertilizer as a service box that comes every month, I don't know. I'm just like coming up with this stuff.
Yeah, for sure.
But,
No, it makes sense. It's what is their unfair competitive advantage that they have?
totally.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, do they understand this at a level like we can help with the product? We can
Right.
help with the go-to-market strategy. We can help with figuring out how to monetize it, etc. We can't help with knowing 30 years of experience with fertilizer.
Right.
Like I can't do anything with that.
Makes
Um,
sense. Yep.
but so we like people that have that depth of knowledge in the industry that they're going into. And then like I said, just a really great team. And then if on top of that they're coming up with, I'd say the last piece that I personally love is if people have come to us and they've proven out something a little bit through like a duct tape solution.
Hmm.
Like four or five different companies have come to us and said, hey, I've got this thing where I took type form and I stuck it to, some other thing. And then I've had two other services and the user doesn't know that they're going through here. And I'm doing calls through Twilio. So it
And
looks like it's coming.
Zapier and all that. Right.
Exactly. And they're like, but I made $400 last month from 30 people. And I'm like, cool. You got people to pay you. Real people spent their money with you for something. That's like the first big step.
Yep.
Cool. I have no doubt that now we can turn this thing into something that's doing 10 million a month. So that's one of the things I absolutely love seeing is when people, and that's that same like, hey, go get them. I'm going to let nothing hold me back. Personally, I don't like the word hate, but if I were to use it, I'd say, I hate when people are like, oh well, this idea could work. I just don't have funding.
Right. Right.
And
Yeah.
like,
It's a
okay,
cop
guess what?
out.
Yeah, it's never going to work for you.
Yeah.
Like if you're the type of person that like sees a bump in the road and says, oh, can't do anything. There's so many bumps in the road.
Yeah, and I'll tell this to any entrepreneur that's listening. They say they can't get funding, and they do get funding. Guess what? There's going to be a time in the company's life cycle where they can't get funding again, right? And they're going to have to find a way to make it work, right? So it's not just the beginning. They're going to run out of money, and they're going to have to figure out ways to be resourceful with less capital. So, to say it early on is not really the right move because you have to deal with it later on too.
That's such a good point. That's such a good point.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'd say like for the first probably 4 years, there's nothing but bumps in the road.
Oh,
So
for sure, for sure. I think to your point, also like the best question you can ask an entrepreneur is why you? I mean, that's essentially what you said about the example that you gave with the fertilizer guy. Everybody can have an idea. I'm sure the idea
yeah,
for Uber, 100 people had that idea. The question is like, why you? Why are you the person that can do it? And if an entrepreneur has a great answer for that, I think they're already kind of half the way there, right? Like, what's their unfair competitive advantage? Or do they have an industry connection that nobody has? Something that gives them that unfair competitive advantage. That's very compelling to me whenever I hear it.
for sure. For sure. Yep. Completely agree.
Awesome.
The,
So
the problem
yeah,
with
go
talking with you, Will, is I agree with everything you say.
ahead.
So like it's like, yep, I agree with that. There's no room for debate.
Listen, no, I'm piggybacking off all your stuff. This is me getting inspired by what you're saying. So you were mentioning failures and lessons learned the hard way. Like you said, being an entrepreneur is full of failures, right? It's just part of what comes with the territory. What are
Yeah.
some of your failures that you've experienced, either in your career or very big things, or some of the hardest lessons learned that at the time you're like, damn, this sucks. But now you're like, I'm so happy I went through that because it taught me a valuable lesson.
Yeah, I mean, I'd say, I mean, I've got so many failures, but some that definitely have always stuck out to me is, so I mentioned that, I'd been back into technology for like 2 or 3 weeks, and then like TechCrunch does this cover story on this startup. So, I mean, the way that that happened is, uh, I tossed together a quick press release with the help of somebody that I used to know. She typed it up for me, and I was like, "This sounds good." And I sent it in to TechCrunch and to Michael. It was just Michael Arlington at the time. There was
Yeah.
nobody else there. And I said, "Hey, Michael, here's this press release. Um, I'm giving you the early scoop on
You got the
this startup."
exclusive. Absolutely.
Exactly. And I'm like, I'm launching this in like 3 weeks. You can post like a day ahead of time. I won't mention to anybody else. The New York Times will be on hold.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he wrote back and he goes, "I've got no news for tomorrow. Can you finish it for tomorrow instead of 3 weeks? And I'll make you my cover story."
That's awesome.
Which sounds awesome, but at the same time, there was 3 weeks of work to do.
Yeah.
Like my mom was visiting me in Florida for the first time. I said, "Mom, I'm not going to see you until like, I don't know, 2 or 3 days from now." And I literally just stayed up coding all night. And the best thing happened, which was also the worst thing, which was it blew up overnight. And uh and i and it, I wasn't prepared, and any like I was not prepared for 40,000 people to be using the site. And like I had those times to like put in front of a handful of people to hear, what are things that you like, what are things you don't like, you know
Yep.
what are potential problems that you see showing up. I didn't do any of that stuff. Which I'd love to say if I'd had the extra 2 or 3 weeks that I would have, but I probably still wouldn't have done half that stuff because it's stuff I learned over time. But it definitely would have been a lot more put together. I would have been more planned for the success that could come along with like a TechCrunch headline. And so what happened is we had a ton of people come in, and if I would have been prepared for that, I probably could have sold the company for $100 million, and it could have been something like really huge.
Hmm.
Instead, I sold it for pennies on the dollar of what it should have been. And that was just purely because I wasn't prepared. So I'd say one thing is, there's two lessons there. One is say no, like learn to say no. No is like one of the most valuable words in the entire world.
Mm.
There's so often you think you're missing out on something by saying no, and you'll end up realizing that if it doesn't feel right, or you feel like you're squeezing yourself into a bad position, you're drastically better off saying no. And I'm sure if I would have said no, he would have been fine publishing the article in 3 weeks. And it's not his fault; it was my fault. But then the other thing is being prepared for success. Like
For sure.
I think it's we're all taught to be prepared for failure. you know, but like be at least somewhat prepared in case everything works out
Right.
better than you expected. You know,
It's a great
so
point.
have a plan for that. So that's definitely one. Then I definitely had another instance where it was just that like I should have closed it down a lot earlier. A friend of mine and it was like the second startup I did right after that one. I just moved to South Florida, and I was a young punk. And someone was like, "Oh, you got to go to the nightclubs on South Beach." And I was like,
Mhm.
"Cool." And like we went to one, and the first club I ever went to, it had a big crowd of people out front because they're like they don't have lines; it's just like a crowd.
Yeah.
And somehow we walked up, and they go, "You guys come in," and like the seas parted, and like we were like let in. I was like, "This is amazing." And so the next weekend, I said, let's go to the hardest club to get into because we're so awesome. Obviously, they'll let us in anywhere. And we stood out in front of that place for like 2 hours, just like begging to get in. And then like a little group of models, like they were like models that just walked up. They worked for the same agency or whatever. They came up and they tugged on like the door guy's like sleeve, and he looks at him and he goes, "Never touch me again. You're never getting in here." And I was like, wow, we're definitely not getting in, like, but because of that, sorry, long story short, we decided we were going to create a nightlife website because then they'd have to let us in. And
Mm.
it ended up becoming like the third largest nightlife website in the world, and the largest one for Florida. which sounds great, but I mean, that is such a shady industry.
Oh,
Like
sure.
that whole industry is just nothing but the shadiest people. I mean, sorry if you're in the industry, maybe you're the one good guy, but you know,
I'm not in
but
the industry, but
well, I
I
mean,
know that.
anybody
Yeah,
listening, if
yep,
anybody listening's in the industry, but I should have like within the first year just been like, okay, this is never like the industry is never going to be not shady, at least not in the next few years.
yep.
So let's pull the plug on this and move towards an industry where we can trust people and contracts and so forth.
Things you could
But
be feel good about.
yeah, and we kept on going for probably 3 or 4 years, and we should have just been like peace, sold it
Hmm.
off to one of the competitors, and just called it a day.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so those are two lessons. I'm sure I have about 400 more, but those are definitely two kind of definite failures.
Awesome. Very cool. Those are great, great, great examples. And how's it like now balancing all this stuff that the company's growing and you're a dad, right? You got two kids, right?
Two
Uh,
kids, yep.
and
By the time this airs, we probably will announce that we have a third one on the way. So,
wow, dude, congrats, man. That's awesome. I
thank
love
you.
that.
So yeah, we got
Amazing.
our little baby boy on the way. He's about 5 months along right now. So
Beautiful. That's amazing. Congrats, dude.
thank you.
So how is it to balance all the growing family and a growing business? Do you have like cutoff markers,
You
just
know
to
what?
wrap up because I know we
So
only have a few minutes left, but I definitely want to hear that.
perfect. Yeah, yeah. So I'll say, I was doing really good on that kind of life balance, and then during this whole COVID pandemic thing, obviously things change. I had no idea which direction things were going to go. Like I think most people,
Hmm.
so we just went immediately into like prepare for every particular situation, and then just stay kind of like listening for any signs of things going one way or the other,
Yep.
so you can just kind of quickly adapt to them. But so I mean, for the last 3 months, I hear the same thing from so many dads and moms right now, where it's like I'm stuck at home, but the amazing part of that is my kids are right down the hall, and I love that. But I haven't seen them in 2 or 3 months because I'm working so much just to like get through this moment in time where,
Yeah.
where things are so unpredictable. So I'm definitely living a bit of that right now, but it's getting back to the point where I have my 6 o'clock dinner. It's like that's
Yep.
cut.
Yep.
Have lunch, in the middle of the day when I can, when I even have a chance just to eat, and then I have breakfast in the morning with the kids. So that part's great. And as of 6 o'clock every night, I have time. And then on the weekends, I've started actually doing technology free weekends. So I tell people they can call me or text me. But other than that, I don't even check my phone I don't check my phone to check the weather. I'm like, it's going to be a surprise.
Yep.
That's nice. It's nice every once in a while to like not know.
For
you
sure. No, dude,
know?
I've been doing the exact same thing. It's funny you mentioned. I do digital Sabbaths where I shut
Yeah.
off my computer and my phone from sunset on Friday night to sunset Saturday night and just unplug. And it's been great for me because sometimes I feel too plugged in.
Yeah, you feel that weight come off. Like at least for me,
Definitely.
like it just feels like stress. Just
For
that
sure.
stress of like checking, like that I have to be checking this. I have to be checking this.
Right.
It's, wow, I'm not. No, I'm just not going to. It's that saying no.
100%.
But apart from this, I'd say I've got such an absolutely amazing team, and this is where that great team comes in. That it's gotten to that point where I'm really not needed. I would hope that I'm helpful, but I'm not needed, and I think we've built the company in a way where nobody's really needed, which is what you should be kind of aiming for when you
Absolutely.
start
Yep.
getting to about 60 people or so. And so it's gotten that situation where, partners will be like, hey, I'm taking a 3 week vacation, and it's like, cool. And that can, that might sound to most people like, oh, well, what's the big deal about that? Well, start a business and grow to a bunch of people. And it's so easy to fall into the trap of just partners never take any time off, like
For
not even
sure.
a day, so.
Ideally, that's how you have it. Nobody's mission critical. Everybody's important, but if you need to take a step back, the company can go on and operate.
Yeah.
Awesome, brother. Well, Chris, thank you so much for the time. Real quick before we end the episode, where can people find Very Big Things and you? How can they get in touch with you?
Yeah, I mean, fortunately, if you Google very big things, we'll pop up. If you go to verybigthings.com, we'll pop up.
Nice. Good job on the SEO.
Yeah, not a lot of people are going after that one somehow.
Yeah.
We bought the domain for like $400. It was amazing,
Amazing.
right? and, uh, and I'd say the best place to usually find me is going to be on LinkedIn, because
Okay.
on LinkedIn you can connect with me, you can send me messages, etc. I try to not check my email more than I have to, so it's actually a better spot. But if you're looking for work or something, just shoot a message right through our website, through the contact form. It's definitely the best way.
Awesome. And we'll drop all of Chris's info and his company's info in the description of this podcast so anybody listening or watching can find it. Chris, dude, thank you so much for your time, brother. It was a great
Dude,
chat.
thank you as always for everything that you're doing in the community. For those that don't already know, like Will's, I think one of the staples of like community in the startup world and tech world down here in South Florida. So like, thank you for this, for putting it on, for the other podcasts you put together, and just everything else. I'm in the LLC group which you put together, which has been massively helpful, especially through this pandemic. And so yeah, just appreciate it, man.
Yeah, no, dude, thank you. That it warms my heart to hear that, and it's my pleasure. So, thank you again, Chris, and we'll talk soon, brother.
Beautiful. Have a great one.
All right, you
See you later.
too.